You're listening to the 49 Carats Podcast, a 49ers Goldmine production with Stephanie Sanchez.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another edition of the 49 Carats Podcast. I'm your host, Steph. It is Monday, December 2nd. We're just some hours, I guess, half a day removed from the 49ers' latest loss, quite an embarrassing one against the Bills. But we have a lot of news to share regarding injuries and how the 49ers can move forward from this. So thank you to everyone that's tuning in. And of course, my Monday co-host, as always, Weston. How you doing, man? How you holding up?
Took every ounce of me to not just say, Steph, I don't think I can do it on Monday night.
Well, look, you cracked open a what are those called again? The crystal water.
The clearly Canadian.
Clearly Canadian that you love so much, and they're pretty good.
And we've established they're juice, not water. Is that correct?
Yes, but they're a lot of sugar in those. Well, like I said, thank you to everyone that tuned in. We have a lot to discuss today as we have the last 3 or so Mondays for this team. And Weston, I hope you enjoyed your Thanksgiving at least.
Yeah, actually Thanksgiving was rather enjoyable. The day itself was small and quiet, but then the weekend was filled with a bunch of family. It was enjoyable. It goes so fast. Hope the same for you and your family.
Yeah, it wasn't too bad. I couldn't help but continue to think about last season, last Thanksgiving, when we were so happy, joyously watching the 49ers eat their turkey, on prime time. And, what a difference a year makes. I was just, I guess, a little blown away. But I was thinking of them. I was thinking of that team. And, man, a lot has changed. Now, again, like I said, we have a lot to discuss, but I did want to start by, just talking about the really sad news that we got today regarding Trent Williams and his wife. I believe her name is Sandra, who gave birth to a stillborn, and that happened, I think, sometime last week. So really, really awful news. Just given, especially like what happened to Mooney Ward not so long ago as well. Him losing his 1-year-old daughter, just tragic. Like I just can't even comprehend what's going through the lives of some of these guys. Trent Williams, like I said, Mooney Ward, and it just feels like what's going on this season feels very minor when you think about what could be going on in the personal lives of some of these players. And Mooney Ward played that game on Sunday, the first time he was back on the field since his tragedy. So just my heart goes out to them, and just hopefully they take all the time they need to get back. So like I said, football definitely not important compared to what he's going through. So my heart goes out to them.
It's even when you hear more about Trent's story about how his wife was pregnant with twins and they lost one of the babies like early in her pregnancy term, and then this one being a stillborn. Like I couldn't. It's every parent's worst nightmare. I could not fathom what he and his wife and extended family are going through. But the main point, Steph, like you said, is in moments like this and in tough times like this, certainly football just feels barely secondary in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, and I didn't get to see the presser today from Kyle Shanahan, but I did see that he got a little choked up delivering that news in the presser today. So I think it just shows the unity that this team has, again, outside of football and outside of them being a team. I think on a personal level, everyone in that locker room means so much to each other. So despite the season not going how it's going, they still have that. So But yeah, I mean,
And I think
again,
that's important, though, Steph.
it
The
absolutely is.
the unity that they have, and because in a down season like this, where at every turn you're looking for somebody to blame, right? And they're just not blaming each other. Like it's still, so that's what makes it feel like even more of this like anomaly, unknown, like what is going on? Like, yeah, we all felt like we saw this coming, but just all these things that led up to it. But in those times, I think everybody wants to be like, coaches lost the locker room, or they're not playing for one another, and they're not jiving as a team. And while I don't think they're playing with urgency and other things, I don't think they're turning on one another. Like nobody's pointing the finger at each other. Like they're the first there to pick each other up. And for those faces that will remain for 2025 and beyond, like that's really important when it comes to rebounding from a season that is significantly below even their own expectations from a performance standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely true. There's a lot of these players are going to be here in 2025, and the relationships they've built in that locker room are going to be important going forward. But to bring it back to just this season, and man, Weston, the injuries do not stop for this
Nope.
team, and we saw Christian McCaffrey after having a great start to this game against Buffalo in the snow, no less. He goes down with an injury. It's a PCL injury, is what the team is calling it. Ed McCaffrey, Christian McCaffrey's dad, as you guys might know, he was on the Kay Adams show earlier, and he did reveal it's a PCL sprain. Kyle Shanahan gave a little more information. No surgery is needed. That feels like some very good news in the grand scheme of it all, right? Because I think we were expecting something much worse with McCaffrey. So injury is bad, but we'll take what we can get. No surgery, 6-week injury. That does mean his season is over. He will be placed on IR. And I know what you're thinking, right? Oh, thank God the 49ers have Jordan Mason. Well, the bad news there is that Jordan Mason, who came in after McCaffrey got hurt, right? And he was looking good. High ankle sprain for him. He will be placed on season-ending IR as well. Kevin Givens, who this was his first game back after a multi-week absence with a groin injury. He tore his pec on Sunday. Again, like the blows just keep on coming. He will also be placed on IR. There's a slew of other players that, missed Sunday's game that will be evaluated throughout the week, including Lenore, Aaron Banks, Jordan Elliott, Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles, Nick Bosa, and of course, Trent Williams. Like we said, he's going through some personal things as well. So on top of the injury he's dealing with, so could be a little more time for him. Dre Greenlaw will continue to be evaluated. He's been in his practice window, and the team announced today as well that safety Talanoa Hufanga, his practice window is going to be opened this week as well. That seems pretty notable just because in the wake of all these injuries, right, Weston, I think we're talking about this team shutting some things down.
Yeah.
And when I think about shutting things down, I'm thinking, okay, whoever's dealing with injury already, like I don't want to see them back on the field. I don't want to see them risk longer term health, for what is, in my opinion, a lost season at this point. We got 6 games left. But, it seems like Hufanga and Greenlaw, like I said, who already has his practice window open, like those two guys might be primed for a return. And I can't tell if it's just like an on-need basis or just because maybe these players want to get back on the field, which I would not blame them either. But interesting choice to get these two guys back potentially.
Yeah, I think. Look, I'm on the fence about Greenlaw. I've said it on your show before that I think he should just be shut down. I think what you have, but I also understand his urgency to want to get back playing football. He's technically auditioning for a job, right? Like in the offseason. So you want to put tape out there. I totally get it. But I think what you have in him. He's a proven commodity. You've already extended him once, right? Like I think there's no harm in shutting him down. Hufanga, I think, is out of necessity. Like, he's absolutely auditioning for his next opportunity. More importantly, he's auditioning and lobbying to stay a part of this team, I would imagine. I think early in the year, they were really hyped on Jair Brown. I think they always thought that Mustafa was going to find a way into the starting role and has. But obviously, Jair Brown's play's been down while Mustafa's arrow is pointing up. Like, there is now an open door for Hufanga to stay here when it didn't feel, he felt like the odd man out much earlier in the season. But with decline play, he may get in again. This is all about audition. Everybody else on this list, if this is a nagging, lingering injury, yeah, you're going to do your best to just call it a day, shut it down for the season. But then there's, you have to do the math gymnastics as well, right? There's only certain number of players and certain amount of people that are available to come play for your football team on Monday, December 2nd. At this point in the year, hey, these are humans too. Even the ones that are on our roster, they're getting ready for the holiday season with their families and doing things. Like, availability is going to be tough to come by, but it's just week after week, they mount. I was thinking this last night. I didn't realize Jordan Mason was that banged up until I was seeing it today. But I was thinking, like, wow, what an opportunity for him to actually come back next year, because you've now just seen how important somebody like him is to your offense going when Christian McCaffrey, for all intents and purposes, is missing an entire season of football with a knee and an Achilles injury. Now, I've done my knee doctor thing here on your show before, but if it's going to be any of the 4 ligaments in the knee, it's the PCL that you want. So that's a good sign. That's got a much shorter timetable, but he's at that part of his career. Like, the usage is just not going to be the same. Don't think it can be the same. That number 2 running back is really important. And Jordan Mason, I thought, was going to be given every opportunity. What was probably a foregone conclusion that he was going to be gone, especially if he was north of 1,000 yards for the season, all of these things. He'd be a viable commodity. Somebody would overpay. But now with this injury, maybe not, right? Like, maybe that gives him an opportunity to find his way back, because to this point, I still would much rather see him on the field than Isaac Garendo, in spot play duty. So, but this list sucks. It's week after week. It's the 2024 season for the San Francisco 49ers.
Yeah, just it doesn't end. I think this team is really scraping the bottom of the barrel in some areas, right? And running back, certainly from one night to the next, it's certainly at that point. Yep. Isaac Garendo is your only true running back on the 53-man roster left. Yep. Kyle Juszczyk technically counts. I mean, he can get some carries. But, after that fumble yesterday, oh, no, I don't know about that. Yeah. But they also have Patrick Taylor Jr. On their practice squad. He's been with the team, all training camp. So he's been in the system, right? They could bring Matt Breida back. I see someone bringing that up as an option that definitely could be something they explore. But yeah, you kind of have to go like bargain shopping at this point, snatch someone up from another practice squad out there, see who hits waivers this week. I saw the Jets waived Izzy Abanikanda, and I think I remember liking him coming out of the draft, but obviously didn't stick over there in New York. So we'll see. We'll see what the 49ers do, but they definitely have to sign some guys, right? There's now 3 spots on the roster that just opened up with the guys who are going to be placed on IR. So definitely some decisions to be made. Kevin Givens on the defensive line as well, that it's already thin. Here's the thing, right? We've got a couple guys who are already dealing with injury. Like we already mentioned, Nick Bosa. I could see Nick Bosa returning, right, when he's healthy, only because you have no choice. And I'm going to say the same thing about Fred Warner. Like, I see a couple people saying, shut down Fred Warner. I have been saying, like, what is he doing out there? But at the same time, like, what other option do you really have? I mean, that unfortunately, you have Devondre Campbell, you have D. Winters. Flanagan Fowles, like we said, he's injured right now. He's going to be evaluated throughout the week. And then on your practice squad, you have Jalen Graham and Deshaun White. Like they very thin there as well. So I would like to see some players shut down, but realistically, I don't know if they can shut down everyone, but
they can't. Like I said, this is just where the math gymnastics comes into play.
Yeah.
But we talked about this last week, Steph. We were like, I think as where we were in the acceptance point of our fandom was shut this thing down, right? This just feels like a lost cause. And what did I say? I said that no way Kyle does it. We can say this till we're blue in the face. No way he does it. I think the silver lining that comes from this litany list of injuries is his hand is being played for him at this point, right? Like, and
yeah,
now you're 2 games back in the division. Now it's even less likely. Like you will be forced to accept reality at this point. I mean, as of last week, as of 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time last night, you could still make the argument we got to go out and do this damn thing because it's right there for the taking, right? All we got to do is go win some football games and we'll be in this. But with every week, it becomes less and less likely. And now is the moment to take advantage of the opportunity that's presented and say, like, okay, do I really need Fred Warner going on a bum ankle for another month and a half, right? And hindering? I probably don't. What are we playing for? What is he playing for? I think those decisions get a little bit easier when you're not in the mix, when you find yourself on the outside looking in.
Yeah, and that's, I think, officially where the team needs to be at. I understood, last week, even the week before that, of like the message to the team in the locker room still needing to be, we have to try, we could still do this. Like, I understand that aspect of it. That's football, that's the NFL. You gotta keep trying. You can't say we're giving up. Now I think the message is clear where you don't have to actually say, hey guys, we're shutting it down, but we're shutting it down because there is just too much. I think the players themselves can see, like, your top 2 running backs just ended up on IR for the rest of the season. I think that kind of just spells what's happening here. So I think that can give these players some level of acceptance as to what's happening here, if they weren't already at that point. But yeah, I mean, like you said, the injuries have truly forced Kyle Shanahan's hand to play some of these younger players. And now I feel like a part of me can look forward to that. It's like, okay, like, let's just dead the 2024 season and look towards 2025, right?
Yep.
I'm excited to see Isaac Guerendo, right? Like, I'm kind of excited for that. And whoever else, we might see by way of, the 49ers injuries, right? I think it's important to see what you have. Obviously, I think we know there's going to be some changes this offseason, and I think what happens in these remaining games is going to give you a better idea of who you want to move forward with, right? Who deserves an extension. And I think that's part of it for Greenlaw, right? Like, poor guy, this was an extension year for him. And so, for him, he wants to get back out there. Hufanga as well. So in their case, it makes sense. Steve-O says his car is going on IR. Hey man, I think mine's getting there too. I feel that blame. You can blame me. That's fine. Man. But yeah, it's crazy, Weston, because like it's Monday, right? And usually Monday, like we get into the nitty-gritty details of like what unfolded in the game. And it's almost like these last 2 games, there isn't anything new to talk about. It's just the same old, but worse than the week before, right? Like I said it last in the post game yesterday. I was like, this team is beyond analysis. At this point, there's nothing else to say. It's just like, okay, it is what it is. How do we move forward from this now? Like that's pretty much where we're at. And for everyone who's excited about draft season because it's coming a hell of a lot closer than it did last year, right? I'll just say the 49ers right now would have the 14th overall pick in the draft. So that's something to look forward to as well. If we want to have some silver linings about that. But yeah, I think we know this season, shut it down. It's done.
Probably only a loss or two away from finding that from being 14 and sneaking into the top 10 in this draft. And that's important because if you survey most GMs and coaches across the league, while there's 32 first round picks, they'll usually tell you that their board only consists of 15 to 17 individuals that are given a first round grade by that team. So when you're drafting in the back half, that means other GMs basically agree with you that you're drafting second round talent with your first round pick. So an increased likelihood if you're drafting in the top 15, so long as your team doesn't swing and miss like a lot of teams do, like we have in the past, maybe you're getting somebody who can come in and contribute right away. Wink, wink, maybe somebody who plays on the offensive line would be a good and wise. And here's why, Steph, because a couple things you said. There is no analysis. The analysis has been the same since like week 3. Yeah. It's literally they're not finding new ways to lose football games. They're losing football games the exact same way week to week to week. And that's what's like super frustrating. If you look at this game in particular, first opening, your first drive, right? You hold them to a 3-and-out. Then you go 9 plays, 48 yards, you kick a field goal. Then they go all the way down the field, score a touchdown. Then you go another 9 plays, 48 yards. You bring it down to their 27-yard line at one point, miss a field goal. Then you go 7 plays, 36 yards into their territory again, punt. Yeah. Then another 8-play or 5-play drive that you go all the way down into their territory before the half, miss another field goal, right? Then you start the second half with a fumble as you're going into the end zone. Like they move the ball with no problem. Like early in this game with Christian McCaffrey, okay, Buffalo went down and scored. Got it. We haven't played in the snow in a while, but we're running the ball, right? We're running the ball. Nobody was playing defense yesterday. You couldn't, it was impossible. But so no analysis required, but why I say, the first round, and everybody's saying, right? First round offensive lineman, defense lineman, I don't care. This team is just not physical like they used to be. The 2019 49ers would have won this football game. The Jim Harbaugh era, 2011, 12, 13 would have dominated this football game against the Buffalo Bills because they always won at the line on both sides of the ball, and that's what that required. Buffalo was physical. Yes, they have a Superman at quarterback. I get it, but was he really exceptional? No, we just didn't stop anybody. The best thing he did was for me on my fantasy squad, throwing a touchdown and catching a touchdown on the same freaking play. I didn't even know you could do. I've been watching football for almost 40 years. I didn't even know you could do that. Didn't even know that was a thing until I'm watching this last night. I'm like, what? He gets credit for both. We'll take it.
Yeah. How many points did you get on that?
That was you don't get credit. So the NFL rule, which fantasy follows, is he doesn't get credit for the reception. Amari Cooper gets the reception. Gotcha. So he gets the passing yards, which was 7, the receiving yards, which was 7, passing touchdown, receiving touchdown. So it was 13 and a half point play.
Yeah. I mean, that's a silver lining right there. At least if you had, Josh Allen on your fantasy team, you feel good about that. You don't feel good about the 49ers, but you can.
But I think the point, Steph, is again, no analysis required. It's just rinse and repeat week after week after week. It's execution and finish. I would say finishing more than even execution. They just don't finish.
They don't finish. And these last 2 games, they barely started. You know what I mean? I think with each week since the bye week, which by the way, after the bye week, and even a little bit before then, you kept hearing must win. The locker room is angry. Yeah. We have urgency. We just need a win every game from here on out. This is a must win. Since the bye week, they've lost 3 in a row. They've lost 3 must wins in a row. And like, I think that says everything. Like, this team is shot as far as energy goes. And I know Kyle yesterday in the post game was asked about this team having fight. And I don't know, man. Like, to me, they don't look like they have any fight. You could be a bad team. You could be a bad team and lose a bunch of games and still have some fight in you, right?
Carolina Panthers.
Taking
the Chiefs all the way to the wire, finding a way.
Isn't that crazy?
To hang with Tampa, you know what I mean? Like, I think your point is well noted about the 49ers, about like, the blowouts the last 2 weeks. The difference is they've been committing the same mistakes, but now they're doing it against playoff teams that are competing for Super Bowls, right? Like Packers are definitively one of them. Obviously, the Buffalo Bills, like they're gonna eat your lunch if you just gift them the ball and don't finish the way that this team has been all season. And you're right, there's no urgency. I will never question anybody's desire or will. Blended those together, desire to win at anything in life, right? But we all know winning feels so much better than losing. I do believe they all want to win, but when you take a look around and you're tired of beating the same drum, and you think about like what Mooney Ward and Trent Williams are going through and what all these people are going through in their own life. I mean, I'm sure there's 4 more stories that we don't know about that are kept under wraps that might not be this extreme. You take a breath for your second and you're just like, I'm over that, and I think that's what you're seeing, right? Like you're just seeing a defeated roster that candidly, I don't want to call it a refresh. I don't want to call it a reach, I call
it a retool. That's like the
new faces are needed,
correct term.
Right? It's like in your professional work life, right, Steph? Like think about it. Like every once in a while, the company's got to find new faces, people who aren't jaded and beat down and worn out from everything that's taken place over the last 4, 5, 6 years, depending upon the player, and the frustration of not getting to the mountaintop. It's necessary for this team. I think if you were to get Fred Warner in a room one-on-one and just like, Fred, if they shut you down for the rest of the season, honestly, how would you feel? I bet he'd look you in the face and be like, relieved. As much as this guy's a warrior and wants to compete and wants to play, like, him and his wife, they're growing, they're doing their family, right? On this frustration piled onto that, when it's not sunshine and rainbows, every once in a while, you just got to take a beat, Like I say this to my kid all the time when he's like freaking out, but he doesn't even know why. I'm like, dude, let's just take a beat. Let's just take a second, walk away, get into a different room, whatever it is. I guarantee you, Fred would be like relieved because of how much he's putting on himself and understanding that, like, okay, how do I better my craft for the future? Because I can't make the changes right now.
Yeah.
I don't know. But that game was frustrating.
I hope that Fred even mentioning the ankle injury, him fracturing it, was a precursor to him getting shut down. Like, I hope he was just kind of teasing that eventually happening.
Yeah. Or like, hey, shut me down. You know what I mean? You guys aren't hearing me. You're not listening to the training staff. Like, I mean, listen, it doesn't take Stevie Wonder could tell you that Fred Warner's not playing the same ball he was playing through the first 4 weeks of the game.
Clearly not. Yep. But we'll see, right? We've been saying that some of the 49ers decisions have kind of been forced upon them through some of these injuries, but I think it's time for them to make some of those decisions for themselves as to who should get more playing time going forward, right? Who do you want to see more of? Who do you want to see less of, right? I saw some people in the comments, talking about Debo, for example, maybe him being someone that gets less playing time. Oh, and some people want to see him maybe strictly as a return man. That seems to be something he's not bad at, except for the fumble. But, for some reason, the run plays for him, gotten tired. The defenses are playing more man-to-man against the 49ers, and, we kind of know how that goes to an extent. And I think look at the comments right now. Look at these comments. Debo overrated. Cut Debo. Debo is washed. Debo can't even run his own podcast. I mean, man.
Brutal.
That's brutal. I mean, who could have seen that coming, right? I mean, look, this whole run it back thing that the 49ers did, I think it could come at a cost, and I think we're seeing the high cost of that would be Debo and just the season that he's put forth this season, unfortunately. I think that's one of the low-hanging fruit for someone you kind of need to move on from, right? And he was one of the building blocks of this team when they were as good as they were. But I think we're seeing that this team needs to evolve outside of that. Even the things that Debo does well, when you call those things, it doesn't work like it used to, right? So I think that I don't know how much of that is the player himself, or if it's defenses keying in on that now because they've seen it all before. It could be a combination of both. But it's a tough watch with Debo. And I'd like to see more Jacob Cowing. I'd like to see more Ricky Pearsall. I know he's getting snaps, but I want to see more targets for Ricky. He slipped on one of his targets. So it was just a rough outing for the 49ers, especially being out there in the snow. They looked slow.
Listen, the couple of things. I have a theory on Debo. I know, listen, has he played well this season? No, not to the expectation. He is not a washed football player. He's still a stud superstar athlete. You see it in the return game, right? But what you're seeing is what Debo's strength is. Like what you all remember Debo to be is what he is with the ball in his hands after the catch. And that's with a full head of steam. That's dragging him across the field. He's just been used drastically differently. Right here. In my opinion, than he has in years past. And the expectations in the contract don't align with what he really is. He's not a number one wide receiver in the NFL by definition 100%. Of the position. It's what high school players get labeled when they have multiple positions. Athlete, right? Like that's what they get labeled and specialized in when they're coming out of high school and being recruited by colleges. That's what Debo Samuel is. He can do so many things. He can be a jack of all trades. I think the problem, and I have not been super critical of Kyle Shanahan this year. I've been more of a defendant of his, but I would say his usage of Debo has become stale and obvious, right? Like there's no creativity around it. Like, we've seen a couple of the jet sweeps. Yeah, we've seen a couple of the bubble screens and rocket screens, but it was like I could have predicted that was the play call to play. You know what I mean? Like 2 plays before there was actually, it was like, this is going to go to 3rd and long, and this is what they're going to do. Like that's not creative, right? Like all the signs point to like that's going to be the play. And so has Debo had the years that we have seen in the past? No. Right. I think he gets overpropped because of his 2021 season, which was just bananas in the back half of that year, but he is not washed. I don't think he's actually going to be going anywhere. If I'm being realistic, I know his contract says he's movable and you would want to after paying Ayuk. I just think he's one of the guys that's going to get the benefit of the doubt because there is a home for him in Kyle Shanahan's offense more so than most other players. Kyle's just got to reignite the fire here about how he's utilizing him. I don't think the players played well, but I also don't think he's been utilized well at all throughout the season. Like I said, I think everything's been in just an obvious 3rd and 7. They got trips over there. You're going to throw, you know what I mean? Like you're going to throw it. Debo's going to come across and then you're going to throw a back screen to him. And he's going to send him in motion. You're going to throw a screen to him. if I know it's coming, I assure you the defensive players know it's coming.
The 49ers have thrown screens at like the lowest rate of any team this season. They I think like 3 yesterday. I think it was like 3 we saw yesterday was like the most they've called like all year. I do agree that Debo is being used differently, but I do think that has kind of been forced upon the 49ers. Again, like I said, defense is comfortable playing the 49ers in more man because they know there's no threat of like Brandon Ayuk, a guy who can beat man.
Yep.
So you're forcing Debo Samuel to become a wide receiver who beats man, in which in most cases, like he is going to struggle in that, right? So that's part of it, right? And I think also we have seen some of the end around, like early in the season, like you said, like, yes, like we've seen the plays, they just haven't been successful like they used to be. Again, I think that's partially because defenses know that it's coming. But there's also been like some uncharacteristic things from Debo in maybe the last couple of weeks since the lock-in incident.
Yeah.
If you want to call it that, that I think has added fuel to the fire. You know, the drop last week, which was right in his hands, that should have been caught. And, you know, again, for a player who told another player to lock in, he just hasn't looked locked in the last couple of weeks. Then you got the fumble on the return. So it all adds up, right? And I do agree with you, Weston. I do see a scenario in which Kyle Shanahan, because remember, everyone, he ultimately has the final say in all roster decisions.
This is his football team. Make no mistake about it.
Even if everyone else in the building is like, man, we're ready to see this Debo guy go, all it takes is for one, and that one being Kyle Shanahan, and saying, no, he's staying, for that to be it. And I agree. I do think to an extent, you know, Shanahan is a little stubborn, right? But I that's why I do see him sticking with Debo, despite the out that they do have with him this offseason. Now, whether or not that's the right decision, maybe we'll find out another day. I do feel like we had some similar discussions about George Kittle, like after last season. I think we were like, oh, Kittle's washed. He's always hurt. And then look at Kittle this season. Like when he's gotten the ball, and, you know, he hasn't been the most healthy this season, but healthy enough. He's there. When he is there, he's scoring touchdowns most of the time when he's getting targeted. Last night, it wasn't targeted all that much, which he did have some comments about. But I don't know. It's just crazy how one season to the next, like, guys can look different either in a good way or a bad way. It's just it's weird.
It's the parody of the sport, right? I mean, listen, Brock Purdy is a prime example of that, right? And he's going to be the talk of the town. What do you do with him in the offseason? Split decisions there, but like midway through last season, then at the end of last season, there were no questions about it whatsoever, right? Everybody was ready to stroke the check. Everybody was just thankful that, legally speaking, in NFL terms, they could not pay him sooner rather than later. They had to wait this season, but the league is it's very funny. It's got a funny way of humbling you, unless you're the Kansas City Chiefs somehow. They seem to never be humbled. They do the humbling apparently, but that's what gives me. But Steph, that's what gives me optimism for next year. Again, we all sit here and we're like, rebuild and all the free agents. I did it last week on your show. There's a few big names on the free agency list from your team, but for the most part, you're going to be fine with parting with the vast majority of these people. It's not going to be this significant changing of the guard. It's not going to be run it back, but it's not going to be the changing of the guard. So this team that can like weather, like, could you literally look around and be like, and envision or dream up a worse season than the 49ers are going through right now in terms of injury, production, etc. Like that's got to give you some optimism. Like, hey, we're not the New York Jets, we're not the Cleveland Browns. You know what I mean? Like you have to feel like you'll bounce back. I know there's a lot of people who are really down on Kyle Shanahan right now. You should not be. Just go look. I mean, the offense is just as potent. They're just not finishing. And like, yes, you can call that on coaching, but like, all right, take last night as an example. Here's the biggest difference. Red zone. Buffalo was 4 of 4. 49ers, 1 of 3, and turned the ball over 3 times. You're not going to win.
Same thing as all season. Yeah.
He's not carrying the football, right? He's not throwing the football. I would argue that he is putting his team in position to produce. It is up to them, and that's why they get paid significantly more than the coaches to finish the job. We will lead you to the water, but when you die of thirst, don't complain to me because I put you in front of the water. You know what I mean? Like you got to drink it. You got to finish it. And that's not going to go away. Like he's not perfect. There's things to change. But because this has been so ridiculous, and because you know that the team is going to be relatively intact, barring some catastrophic reason that you want to detonate everything, I don't think that's the point. I just think you look around and you say, football God said this wasn't the San Francisco 49ers year. It's been wrong since the jump. Okay. Like I almost can stomach that a little bit more in terms of just like rebounding for the following year. But maybe I'm naive. Maybe I'm an idiot. I mean, it's likely that I am, but I have optimism go forward because I still do think all the right pieces are there. And I think this year they're finding a couple sneak surprises that are going to make a bigger impact on this team next year than they already are this year.
Yeah, I mean, if the 49ers have another draft like the 2024 draft, I think they'll be okay. But yes, can they have 2 really good drafts in a row? That it remains to be seen. But Weston, I mean, we always do this on Monday, right? Player of the week. And again, like with where the 49ers are right now, I want us to look at player of the week in a different lens, a different perspective, from the perspective of who's giving us the silver lining. Who are we kind of like, whose performance yesterday gave us a glimmer of hope for the future, right? So that's what I'm looking at. And I want to go first.
Please do.
All right. So I'm going to start with an offensive lineman. And I'm going to go with Ben Barch because he was playing at left guard, in place of Aaron Banks, who hasn't had the greatest season, right? Like, so, but he's the backup. So I think you also think, oh God, like this could be bad. This is his first start with the 49ers, no less. But he allowed just one pressure. I thought as far as run blocking goes, that left side held their own early in this game, especially. Like there were lanes. They looked like they were controlling the line of scrimmage. And that was very encouraging for me to see because the previous couple weeks, the run blocking had been atrocious. So I thought Ben Barch, gave me a glimmer of hope. Now, I'll end that with saying I want to see it again because I think in the snow, we talked about the fact defensive lines have more of a struggle, rushing a passer in the snow, right? So I want to see more, but hopefully that's someone we get to see more of going forward, right? Aaron Banks dealing with the concussion. He'll be, like I said, evaluated throughout the week, but I want to see more Ben Barch in any case. So he's definitely someone that made me feel good after yesterday.
Yeah. I thought the left side of the offensive line held up really good yesterday. Jalen Moore and Ben Barch, and Jalen Moore continues to surprise, right, over his last 2 starts. And I think what we've seen from Jalen Moore over the last 2 weeks is exactly what you're defining with Ben Barch. Like, can you stack these, right? And can you build momentum? And can you almost play yourself into a starting spot at a much more affordable price point than Aaron Banks is going to come at if you want to retain his services in a contract year coming off his a rookie contract? It's Yeah, I thought again, Ben Barch, I thought played well. I thought the left side. I don't think the offensive line was really the problem
It really wasn't, all things
in the
considered.
game, but everyone that you can find, like Ben Barch or Steele, Dominic Pooney, right? Like the way you did in the draft, like that all bodes well. But I mean, focal point for me go forward is both offensive and defensive line. Who's going to be like an unsung hero in the back half of the season that's going to miraculously find themselves, um, on the roster for 2025. Especially like Ben Barch is probably what, on a 1-year deal. I would have to look at it, but I can't imagine we've retained his services for anything beyond this
Yeah, I
season.
don't think it, because he got snatched up from, was it Jacksonville's practice squad or
Yeah,
something like that? Yeah.
he's a UFA, so he's an unrestricted
Yep.
free agent after the season. So,
So
uh,
just another reason for the 49ers to maybe want him to start for the rest of this season. Like, hey, Aaron Banks, sorry, but we want to see what Ben Barch has. We've seen enough of you. You're probably in line to get a contract that we're not willing to pay this offseason anyway. Let's see what we have with with Ben Barch, and then we can make the decision whether we want to, maybe sign him to a 1-year, 2-year deal after this season, right? Like, yeah, definitely
yeah,
something they should
at
look
$1
at.
million to play offensive line, right? Like that's where his contract demand would be. And then you take your 5th or 6th round compensatory pick for Aaron Banks when he bolts. Like that's a win, and that's what they're looking for. And I think who I am going to talk about, I'm looking at in the same vein, like a buried treasure almost,
All
or
right.
a diamond in the rough. And I would say I'm going on the opposite side. I'm going on the defensive line and say Evan Anderson.
Yes.
This undrafted rookie is he's
Man.
making a splash for himself. And I know for last night he got too much TV time for the wrong reason when he slipped coming out of his
Yeah, they played that a couple of times.
a little too much for me because I'm like, no, this guy is actually a player, right? And you're talking about a team that does need to get a little bit younger. What was the knock coming in? This is one of the oldest rosters in the NFL, which is like crazy when like your average age is like 27 years old. It's like the oldest roster in the NFL. It makes me feel like
Yep.
a freaking dinosaur. But hey, Evan Anderson's guy was 22 years old. He had 33 total snaps. I would have to go back and look, but I would imagine that's his highest total of the season. Good blend between rushing, like running snaps, passing and rushing the passer. Like he had a really solid blend. He was the highest rated defensive player according to PFF. Couple tackles, like, and nothing super sexy, just very consistent. And as a team that, what has been, when teams talked about the 49ers when they were a powerhouse, let's say like 2019 through even last season, they all wanted to talk about how this team creates pressure with 4 and they never have to blitz. And they have this dominant defensive line that Chris Kasarik curates and they can rotate 4 at a time and keep people fresh. Like he's part of that equation. Like I have no doubt this team wants to get back to that, to that on the defensive side of the ball, and they have to get deeper on the offensive line. And this is a guy who's an unrestricted or undrafted free agent, 22 years old. I think he has absolutely earned the opportunity to be back on this roster next year, and it's not going to cost you a ton.
100%. He was also on my short list of nominees for this week as well, because, and I think we've seen the progression for Evan Anderson, right?
Yep.
Like every time he's gotten playing time, he's looked good. That playing time has increased. He's continued to look good, right? So for him to finally be getting a start again, via injuries from other guys, don't care. Like he looked good. He looked serviceable. He looked like someone you can build with, right? That defensive line that we keep calling depleted. That's the kind of acquisition you want to have, like as an undrafted free agent. Even if he was a draft pick, I'd be like, hey, like this kid's not bad. Like, okay, I want to see him. I want to see more of him on this line. So yeah, it's been really cool to see him get more playing time and him do the most with those opportunities. So yeah, Evan Anderson definitely a good one as well. Just curious, did you have any others?
No. Well, my honorable
Okay.
honorable mention was Christian McCaffrey because he started very well in this game. He started very well off. Very
See,
well
that's the
off.
thing. Yeah, I would have really liked, like, if Christian finished this game, I think we would have definitely given him, player of the week nomination, and he would have probably won. Like, that's how good he was looking. I Sure, like, we'll leave it with those two names. Let the people fight over that in the live chat. So this week, we're excited about Ben Barch, what could be. Hopefully, we get to see more of him, right? And Evan Anderson. So I'm gonna just
If that doesn't summarize
exciting stuff.
2024, I don't know what does.
Oh yeah, and then I also wanted to, because I shared this meme last week, right? This is the worst loss of the season. The worst loss of the season so far. And it was true again, right? Like, it managed to lose worse. But anyway, our nominees for 49K Player of the Week, Week 13, Ben Barch, Evan Anderson. You guys have at it in the comments. Let us know who you vote for in the live chat, all right? In the meantime, we're going to give some flowers and give some notices. I do have a player I want to give flowers to that I contemplated like nominating, right? I'm gonna say Jalen Moore. This is the second week in a row that he's filled in very honorably for Trent Williams. Those are very big shoes to fill. I remember last week you nominated him, and I was like, oh yeah, like Jalen Moore. I totally forgot about him. I didn't even hear his name. Forgot he was starting for a second. That is very good. And again, like I knew that he was Jalen Moore starting again for Trent, and again, didn't really hear much of him, but we did see the left side of that line having some push, having some control. And I do think, Jalen Moore had something to do with that as well. So, I'm going to give some flowers to him this week. I think definitely someone that I want to see more of, to close out this season. And with, things happening with Trent, I think we may get that opportunity to see more of Jalen Moore. And he's someone I think the 49ers should be interested in keeping around. I mean, obviously he'd still be under contract, but
Can he play right tackle? That's my question. That's what I think I want.
Can he play right tackle? It's a good question. I mean, I think did he play right tackle in college? Let's see. Well, I'll look it up. But
I have no flowers, by the way. Jalen Moore would have been my.
It's like you're done. No flowers, dude.
I think look at the names on the screen, right? Like, this is where we are in the 2020, and this is not a slight on Ben Barch and Evan Anderson. They're making the most out of their opportunity. I celebrate and I applaud that. But in full transparency, if we were talking about winning games and being in a playoff hunt, these are not the names that would be appearing on the screen. It would be totally different reasoning behind other players. And there wasn't when you lose 35-10 in the snow in a game that I was supposed to be at. Thank God I was not at that game. I would have been freaking miserable shoveling out my own seat and making that trip for what the product that was put on the field. Like, there's just not a lot to celebrate. But I think I give my kudos earlier when I mentioned Jalen Moore's name, and I mentioned that the offensive line, I thought, played well. They were the least of the issues offensively and dictating the outcome of this game.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, it's been a rough couple of weeks where we're literally like pulling teeth trying to nominate someone. It's the standards have changed quite significantly, I would say, for player of the week.
But how you watch the game has changed, hasn't it, Steph?
Oh yeah,
you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like, looking
and
for
you know what?
something different.
You know what? I am gonna add someone else to
the flowers list, or to the okay?
Yeah, to flowers. I'm going to add in Malik Mustafa.
Yeah.
All right. Because, I mean, he continues to just be like a bulldozer out there. Or I don't know. What would be a better term? A rocket, I guess. Like, just he always comes downhill like at a crazy speed, looking to make a hit. It's impressive. He's been outplaying Jair Brown.
Oh, yeah, it's not even close.
Yeah. Jair Brown's a topic for another day, but Malik Mustafa I thought was pretty good. And early in this game, like he had a couple of pass breakups. Like he had one pass breakup, and then I think there was another where I'm trying to remember the play, but it was like on the outside, like towards the right sideline. Forget if that was a breakup too, but he was making some plays, and I love to see that from Mustafa, someone the team should be excited about. And yeah, we'll see if they bring back Hufanga at any point this season. We'll see what the two of them look like together.
On the Mustafa point, it hasn't always been clean, right? There's been plenty of mistakes and plenty of room for improvement, but he's making the mistakes at 100 miles an hour. And that's what you want to see out of a rookie.
Instincts.
And he's playing confidently. Like you can confidently make mistakes, right? Like that's still a good thing. But like with Jair Brown, because we're talking about him, like there's no confidence there. There's none. This is a guy who was the Super Bowl hero, an interception in the Super Bowl, right? Like, and
what happened?
All these things, and just we were beyond thrilled to get this guy onto the field. Everybody celebrated this draft pick, myself included. I'm still high on Jair Brown. I just think he is another product of this season, just being a disaster, and I think he's part of that equation. I think the bigger trouble for him is that his quote unquote competition in Mustafa is significantly outplaying him. And if Hufanga is getting back to healthy, he's going to get opportunities, and that might put Jair Brown on the outs. It could be, or I don't think Mustafa's worried about that. Like, and that's sad. I mean, this Brown's third year in the league, second year in the league, third year in the league, second year in the league.
Only second year player, and that's a crazy thing. I was anticipating a second year leap for him. Obviously, he's
sophomore slump. Let's call it a sophomore slump, and let's move it on, baby.
But yeah, a part of me wonders if they're bringing Hufanga back, or at least opening his practice window. That's not a guarantee that he does come back. Yeah. But maybe they just want to see if Hufanga is good enough to start over Jair Brown, because that's how bad Jair Brown has been as of late. But anyway, who should I assume that your vote would be Evan Anderson, since that's the only nominee you had?
That is a fair assumption. That would be
correct. Yeah. Okay. Cool. That's my vote as well. And so Evan Anderson is your Week 13 49K Player of the Week. Thank you, Matthew, for hitting that like button. I did have a good Thanksgiving. I hope you and everyone else in the live chat had a great Thanksgiving as well. Again, like I said earlier in the show, I was thinking about the 49ers last Thanksgiving and the meeting over the turkey.
Steph,
I was like that X-Men, the Wolverine meme where he's looking at the picture. That was me with the image of them eating the turkey.
Steph, can you do me one favor? Will you entertain me? Since we have to entertain ourselves because the 49ers don't anymore. Can you throw my wife's comment up about... I
did think this was hilarious. Her first comment says, I don't know them, speaking about Ben Barch and Evan Anderson. And then she throws up a vote for Ben Barch.
First of all, I love her, right? Because she kind of is like, F it, I'm going with this guy just based on what they're talking about. But what I want to explain is because she's getting on me lately, Steph, that I'm not watching the games with the same ferociousness and absurdity.
Are you disassociating while watching now?
I am, but I think what I made that comment to you earlier about how we watch the game. You're watching it differently because you're watching for something different. I didn't go in. There was not a single part of me that tuned into the game yesterday and was like, 49ers are going to win this football game.
Right.
Not a single part of me believed that. And I even when we sucked and we were a 2-win team, I used to believe it. Any given Sunday, but this is so now I'm watching to be like, okay, who's making this team? Who's not embarrassing themselves? So it's totally different where like I find myself when I am in like the throes of the passion of my football fandom, you miss so much during the game because you're just like so hyped about a big play or freaking out about a pass interference call or whatever it is. Like, I think my heart is actually, while it's broken into a million pieces, it beats at a much slower pace than it used to during some of these football games, which could be good for longevity,
for your long-term health.
Yeah, for my future prognosis. But I wanted to bring that up because I wanted to say this in front of your listeners and to because I'm trying to explain. She blames me for the 2024 season, and she might not be wrong. I don't know. She might be right.
Well, I know Steve-O, who was here earlier, blames me and my schedule release video for that. Who knows? That might have done it. But no, in all good fun. I mean, we have to find something that makes watching these games enjoyable, right? Yeah. And so I think still doing the player of the week is a good exercise for that. We're trying to find a silver lining. It's difficult at times, but we want to see who we're looking forward to in 2025. And there's still, even in the dumpster fire that is this season, there's still just some things to pick out here and there that haven't been so terrible, right? Yeah. So hopefully we get a little bit more of that in the final stretch of this 2024 season. But as for week 13, that's all she wrote as far as our Monday show today. Thank you so much for everyone that tuned in. Make sure you like this video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet, not just mine, but Weston's as well. Appreciate all of you audio listeners. Leave a rating, leave a review. Weston, thank you so much once again for joining me for this therapy session on a good old Monday. But for now, folks, have a good rest of your Monday. Peace.